Joe! Joe on Joe is the only podcast where Joe talks about Joe. And now, your host, Joe Slepsky.
Hello again, everybody, and welcome back to Joe on Joe. It's me, your host, Joe Slepsky, and happy Cobra Convergence. That's right, it's the annual celebration of all things Cobra, and this is my big entry into it. Thank you, listeners, for coming along for the ride. Thank you, new listeners, any of you Cobra Convergence followers. I appreciate you joining on. This is the podcast where I've gone through every episode of the G.I. Joe Real American Hero cartoon. We've covered all of the issues of the Marvel Comics G.I. Joe comic book. And we've also covered the Extreme cartoon. And now we've been working our way through the How to Draw G.I. Joe book. And if you look at the timeline, the last 2 months, maybe 3 months, I've been working my way through those, and we've been kind of reigniting drawing. This is, by the way, this is Joe Slepsky, your host and entertainment for the evening. Been working our way through those books, and I've been having an absolute good time. And if you're anything like me, someone who loves comic books, who loves G.I. Joe, you grew up drawing these things and wanting to draw these things, and I'm going to be a comic book artist one day, and all that stuff that we went through in the early 90s. Because quite frankly, the bar was set very low for us in the early 90s, so we thought we could all do it. So what I've been on a journey is rediscovering that. I literally haven't drawn in for probably 5 years. And before that, I would do stuff sporadically and get creative sometimes, and then not be creative, and then own a drawing table and use it, and then never draw on it again for years at a time. I'm one of those guys. And so this has been a really cool, personal, fun journey for me to kind of reignite and have a reason every week, quite frankly, to go and draw. So I've been working through those books, and I can see my hand warming up, my arm warming up. I can see the progress. You know, we did Duke, we did Cover Girl, we did Major Blood. I've been doing Zartan, and we finally did some body shots of Zartan the last few weeks. Those are fun. And so it's all leading up to this. It's all leading up to Cobra Convergence. And today's very special Draw with Joe episode. If you look at your timelines, I'm recording this. I haven't even done it yet, so it's probably a little long. I'm anticipating this is going to be a long show. So I'm not saying you're here for the brevity, but what I am saying is you're staring at a blank page right there, right? And we're going to fill it by the end of the day. So or the end of the evening, end of the show, whatever it is. And I'm loving it, and I hope it's been inspiring you guys. I know it absolutely has, because I've seen some stuff on Instagram where it's sparked people's love to pick up the pencil. Because remember, drawing is it's not about the finished product, and it's also not for anyone else but you. Unless you actually are a professional artist out there, then get to work. You have bills to pay. Your editor is waiting for you. But assuming the vast majority of you aren't, it's fun, it's relaxing, it's zen. I've really been enjoying it. So that's what we're up to today. I've also really been enjoying doing this podcast for 8 years, and everyone that's been along for the ride, you've dipped in, you've dipped out, you've come back over the years. It has been an absolute pleasure of mine to hopefully entertain you, but to join you every week after week after week, and talk about G.I. Joe, meet great new people, discover a ton of new stuff. I almost swore. I don't like swearing the show. A ton of new stuff about G.I. Joe that I never knew. I was led with my heart, not necessarily with like my deep encyclopedic knowledge of it. And it's been very rewarding. So recording this before San Diego Comic-Con, I was down there last week I was on a panel on Thursday talking all about Joe on Joe and talking about how to make podcasts and things like that. If you came out to see me and say hello, thank you so much. If you didn't and wanted to, thank you so much for wanting to. If you were there and specifically chose not to say hello, then I get it. I understand, man. I know me. I live with me. I get it. So I appreciate you all. If you want to reach out and say hello, you can do that on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Joe on Joe Pod. You could send me an email to joeandjoepod@gmail.com. That's actually going to become important by the end of this episode. So pay close attention to that. And you can help support the show at our Patreon, patreon.com/joeandjoepod. In fact, if you are a Patreon subscriber, you're seeing this a good week early. So this is the 22nd I'm recording this, and it should be up and hosted and posted by the 23rd. So you get this a week early, celebrate Cobra Convergence, and so on and so forth. All that good stuff. You also need to take some time and give a lot of love to my sponsor, the Movies and a Meal podcast. They have been with me for, I think, 5 years now. They're awesome. They're a great sponsor for the show. They're a great podcast. Really great movies out in the theaters right now. Really, it's as we're listening, as Deadpool Wolverine came out last week and blew the doors away. Haven't seen it yet, but I'm assuming it had cameos from everyone under the sun, and I'm assuming we all loved it. I cannot wait to see that. Listen, if it has a cameo, like if I think actually, I don't think this is a spoiler. I do think Ray Park is in it. I think Ray Park plays Toad in it. But if Ray Park also shows up as Snake Eyes, that would be amazing. So there you go. Those are all the businesses out of the way. Huge thanks to Hooded Cobra Commander 788. Respect to you on your journey in life. He's getting out of the G.I. Joe broadcast game, but he is the organizer and the heart and soul and spirit behind Cobra Convergence. So massive shout out and respect to him for putting this all together over the years and being the leader in that regard. So you are more our Destro than you are Cobra Commander, quite frankly, because you're always there for us. You never leave your soldiers behind, and you never yell retreat. So definitely more of a Cobra Commander than a Destro. So what are we doing today, everyone? You're looking at this blank piece of paper, and you're staring at there's a Destro there, and there is a Snake Eyes there. What could we possibly be doing? Well, one of the things that I first did when I was a kid to learn how to draw, I always drew a lot, but when I really was like, I like comic books, I like drawing, I would lay out a piece of paper on a like a phone book or a book or something. I'd usually lay in my carpet in my living room for most of the time, to be honest. And I would lay down in front of the TV on my stomach, and I would not trace in any way, shape, or form, but I would lay an art book, a cover next to the piece of paper, and I would put it right next to it, and my eyes would flip from one to the other, and one to the other, and one to the other, and I would draw what I saw, and that's how I taught myself how to draw. Good, bad, or ugly. I know I've mentioned that before on the show. That's kind of what I did, but that was it. And I know a lot of people did it that way, but that absolutely was the journey for me. I did a lot of X-Men covers. Walter Simonson was my very, very first artistic inspiration in the comic book world. We're going to talk more about that because buckle up. We got a long road today. So we're going to talk a lot about comics and my history with comics and my passion for comics. So I think we're going to tell that story, but that's how I did it. So in thinking about Cobra Convergence, I was like, what's a special way to do it? I had a couple other ideas that floated and flitted, and I did some samples, and I really, really worked on some stuff and tried to figure some stuff out. But this is the angle I came up with, and I really think it's going to be fun. I think it's going to be a nice emotional little journey today. I have not done one of these. In, I just turned 49. I'm going to say, I'm legitimately going to say 35 years. I'm legitimately going to say I haven't really done one of these in 35 years. Maybe 33 years, something like that. Literally haven't done this. I think I stopped doing these when I was like 15. So that's 14, 15 years old. So anyway, that's a long time. I've drawn a lot. And I did a lot of, I had a comic strip in college at the University of Illinois. I did a lot of that work. I've done some paid stuff over the years. I've done some sequential stuff recently, not recently, but in the last 10 years, I collaborated on pages with my friend Seek Donnelly and his Soul Star book. I put out my own ash can, 8-page ash can. That was my own little soul. So, I mean, I've drawn, I've blah, 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 but I've never done what I'm about to do today. So, I'm stoked. I'm excited. I didn't even warm up for it, but I thought a lot about it, and I looked through a lot of different covers. And today I'm going to be drawing G.I. Joe number 31, ladies and gentlemen. G.I. Joe number 31. Snake Eyes, Destro, in the smoldering ruins of Snake Eyes' cabin. I think this is a perfect candidate for this. There's lots of shading, and I mean this because what have we been learning the last few weeks? We've been doing a lot of shading, kind of little blockier figure, well posed figures. I looked at some of the other covers. I looked at 21. I ruled out right away because everyone's has done and doing something with G.I. Joe 21. So that was toxic. I love it, but it was off limits to me. Then I was looking for real Cobra centric covers. I thought about the one with Cobra Commander, staring at the cover. I think it's a Mark Bright cover, actually. God rest in peace. And he's it's when he returned and he's staring right at the camera. I thought about that, and I felt that was just too much of a static, here's a pose of Cobra cover, and it would really, really, really be aping Bright style. And I love this cover. I love this cover because it is, it's very, it's going to leave room to interpret is where I'm coming from. Rod Wiggum drew the cover, and it's great. Like I think it's an overlooked cover. Probably, I would say, if I were to judge why it might be overlooked, it's because it's so dark. It's got so much like charcoal on there. Well, the reason is because the building he's in just got firebombed, like there's a story reason why it's so dark and charcoaly and stuff. But if you look at the posing, let me scooch it up here. Snake Eyes is just, Snake Eyes defeated, who defeats Snake Eyes, right? Snake Eyes is defeated, laying on the ground. He's got nice posing. We can use those, the block shapes that we've been training on with Zartan and stuff. Destro is in a great position. We can also do the same thing. We've got a nice, it's got nice movement here with like a triangular vanishing point there. So that brings your eyes up the page. Destro is in line with that. He's like a mini pyramid inside this bigger pyramid, with Snake Eyes kind of acting as a base. Like there's a lot to like about this cover. And then it's got enough darkness and shading that I think I could pull it off. But also that I think I won't be here for 4 hours recreating it. But that's what we're going to do today, guys. We're going to recreate G.I. Joe number 31 live, full on, completely blank page. What I'm doing is I'm moving this, setting this right next to the camera over here to my left. So it won't be on camera, but it is completely, where is it? It is completely there, right over there, right next to Snake Eyes. So we'll try to keep him in view, but he won't stay. Yeah, and again, I'm going to do my best to keep the places I'm working on in the frame. I apologize if it slides off frame a little bit. I think I'm going to be a little focused on drawing. But that's it, guys. We're recreating the cover to G.I. Joe 31. I'm super stoked. I think it's going to be great. And what we're going to do is I'm going to give it away at the end of the show. So, I'll give it away when the show airs, is what I'm saying. I mean, not literally on the show, because I'm not live. Like, I'm sitting at home. Rebecca's gone for the evening. The dogs are sleeping. There's no one going to bother me here. If I turned around to give it away, there'd be no one to take it. But when you hear this, we'll do I'll randomly pull, I'll give it a couple weeks, but I'll randomly pull someone's name. If this is a page that you're, when I'm done, if you're like it, if this is a page that you're interested, I'm absolutely, shoot me an email to joeandjoepod@gmail.com. And if you want to, I'll share about it on social media. Just use the hashtag Joe on Joe. I don't think there's too many other people using that hashtag that we have to worry about. Just use hashtag Joe on Joe on social media, and let me know you're interested. Send me an email to joeandjoepod@gmail.com. Let me know if you're interested, and I'll gather up kind of all that stuff, and we will. I'll just do a random poll, and you'll be the lucky winner. So celebrate Cobra Convergence. Or unlucky winner. I gotta be honest, let's be real here. Who knows how this is gonna turn out? So how would I do this? So I want to keep that triangle. The one thing I'm probably not gonna do, to be fair, I'm probably not gonna do the trade dress up top. However, what I'm gonna do is block it out. And I say that I'm probably not gonna do it, even though it probably means I'm gonna end up doing it. But I'm probably not gonna do it just because one, I'm not great with lettering, even though I should be able to pull that off with just I'm looking for my T-square. But it also I'm doing more cover recreation than like a full-on production recreation. However, what we have to do though is we have to allot for it. So I'm going to rough out a flat line up here, and for the record, we've been talking about pencils. I'm using the 3H rather. I'm using the 3H up here. Actually, I'm doing that wrong, aren't I? My T-square. I'm using my T-square incorrectly. There we go. That's it. Sorry. Actually, it wasn't terribly off. There we go. So that's going to be the bottom of the G. And with that, there's also a box, indicia box over here. That rolled down about yay far. So we're gonna roll you there. So we'll see. I'm just gonna map it out now. We'll see how I feel when we get to the end. You know me, and proportions. There's a good chance that G has to be much further down. Anywho, so that's what we're gonna roll with. We're talking triangles. We're talking cash backing. No, we're not. That seems about right. So I could imagine, and one, if you've listened to this show, Rod Wiggum, all time for me. He was the artist for G.I. Joe for me when I first read G.I. Joe. He was like the regular ongoing series, like monthly issues. He was the regular artist to the issues that I picked up, and bottom, it's right about there. I'm sorry, let me blow this up here, and it's about the floor. So we're talking right about there. And so his version of G.I. Joe was kind of like my version. That was kind of like G.I. Joe for me. Here, I'm gonna do this. Pardon the shake, gang. Yeah. Here we go. Let's get a little more realistic here. All right. Yeah. So like his version of G.I. Joe was just was banger. Like it was just tops in all the world. I really, really loved it. And that his style of like a little more, pretty realistic Pretty realistic. I mean, all the GI Joes at the time though were pretty realistic. Let's be fair. There were not a lot of there weren't a lot of GI Joe artists that were working, we'll say, unrealistically. You know, I'm really I almost can guarantee you he did this with actual vanishing points, and I'm not achieving that. So I think that's why my angles are super off. So, but I am eyeballing this. And so then that would be to about here. And that would be to about there. Yeah, okay. I can see that. I can see that happening. And so I think that cemented the way I like my G.I. Joe. Like, I don't like a super, I know for a while they were experimenting with, I don't say anime, but you know what I mean? Like a little more younger versions. There have been some iterations of those over the years and things like that. I'm not a fan. I think G.I. Joe works really, really well when it's really, really grounded in a pseudo reality. But that's just my flavor. I'm just an old man. So the Destro's towering here. So his head is popping up over there. So we're gonna put that oval. We learned from the Zartan lessons. So Destro's standing. Here we go. Sorry for the video again. So Destro's in the doorway like that. And his shoulders pretty big, pretty hunched up. Like he's pretty hunched up. That's what I'm seeing. And he's holding his gun. You know what would be cool? This light doesn't have it. But if this thing shot a little laser as to constantly remind me to target, it's not a bad idea. I think I do have an old laser pointer. I don't know how to do it for this, but maybe for future stuff, that would be a cool little ad to help me kind of keep my eye on the prize. So his hand is right about there. He's holding the gun there. He's doing that. And I like that he's got both hands on. He's got a double grip on that pistol. That's great. He's got some foreshortening on the elbow. That's awesome. And then from the hands, he's got a little bit of the wrist right there. He's got a big waist. I first got Destro. I probably was 9 years around my 9th birthday. It was what I remember, 100% remember. It was a gift at I think it was from my friend Sarah, but it was a gift at the swimming pool. We would have swimming pool parties. We'd rent out water. It was the Chicago Ridge Public Pool. It was called, I want to say it was called Water Haven or something like that. Long since closed. It's been, I think the whole thing was demolished. It's turned into retirement homes or something like that. But just, like your standard local public pool. And it was far enough with cool. It was kind of cool. It was far enough away so that it wasn't super easy to get to. And on one hand, it sounds like it's a little bit of a burden, but it's not, because then it made going there special. You know what I mean? Like I grew up in Chicago Ridge, Illinois. Chicago Ridge, Illinois is a small town. It is, I believe, population of 14,000, something like that. We are a village, like literally a village. We're not even a town or city or anything. It's Chicago Ridge. We're right next to Worth, and Worth. If you've ever driven through Chicago, you know Worth, because Worth is literally their slogan is the friendly village, and they have a huge water tower that you would drive by uh, if you were driving up 294 in Chicago. And 294 is the large expressway that if you're driving anywhere through Chicago, like traveling to Wisconsin or something like that, you're driving on 294. So you 100%, if you've driven through there and paid any kind of attention, you've seen the sign for Worth that says Worth, the friendly village. Well, we were Chicago Ridge, the not so friendly village. No, we were fine, but we were Chicago Ridge, and we were right next door. Here's a fun fact, and I was reminded of this the other day. We were at the movie theater, and I saw so there was like an old movie poster thing for Buck Rogers, and it was the like the Gil Gerard Buck Rogers. And first of all, Gil Gerard, underrated. Bring him back. Gil Gerard in Buck Rogers, the way Buck finds out that he's back in Chicago, he goes near what do you call Mayor Daley's grave, and that's very close to where I live. So I reread that recently, the actual comic book of it, and I was like, holy cow, Buck Rogers was in Chicago Ridge, because he's buried. I think it technically might be like Alsip Incorporated, but his grave literally shares is like across the street, shares a street with Chicago Ridge. So that was pretty funny. That realization that Buck Rogers in the 25th century is hanging out in Chicago Ridge, Illinois. That made me laugh. It still will never not make me laugh. I'm assuming we realized that as a kid, but man, did I forget. Because like, if you're telling me, like, if I'm supposed to remember, if I'm supposed to like, like you're a kid, you tell me that I love Buck Rogers, and you're like, man, Buck, not only is he from Chicago, okay, yeah, Chicago pride and all that stuff, but literally from your tiny little town that no one ever knows. People know Oak Lawn, which is a little larger and next door, but no one ever knows Chicago Ridge. I was like, what? And this was me as a, when I remembered this was, I don't know, 8 years ago or something. So, I was like a 40-year-old grown man being like, what? Buck Rogers. Yeah. So that's my life. And, where this door is going to end up coming here. We're going to see what we can do about this. Anyway, so what was I talking about? Buck Rogers. So now it's time to do those cones. Now this Snake Eyes' arm is cut off by the what do you call the Spider-Man head, the little Marvel Spider-Man trademark that denoted that it wasn't it was direct market versus newsstand. So I guess it'd be the UPC. That's it, the UPC bar. So we eventually are going to be winging that. But also, I'm also really going to try to do this 100% based off Wiggum's drawing, obviously. But also, I'm going to try to bring some of my flair to this. Anyway, I don't even know why I was talking about Chicago Ridge. But Chicago Ridge grew up my first G.I. Joe comic books. Oh, I know, Waterhaven. Yeah. So I got Destro at Waterhaven. And I remember that because I was worried about, literally remember it because I was worried about his chrome head getting wet. Because you had to open it, right? I'm not waiting till we get home to open a Destro. I'll do his gun later. His gun's right here. I'm not waiting till I get home to open Destro, right? Like, I really wanted Destro. Like, he was awesome. My first G.I. Joe was Snake Eyes. I had gotten him at my birthday, so it must have been literally the year earlier. So it was probably my 8th birthday in '83 that I got Snake Eyes from a friend, and that was at Showbiz Pizza. And I do recall. See, like, my memories are really burned in around G.I. Joe, but like it's crazy. Like, that's the things you remember. So I had gotten Snake Eyes as my first figure for the previous. It had to be the previous year's birthday because I don't think I went too long without getting Destro. He was absolutely one of my first guys, and it was definitely my birthday that I got Destro because I was at the swimming pool, and I was worried about it getting wet, not because the toy couldn't get wet, because I thought his head would rust. Like, I don't know. I didn't know what chrome was, but I was so excited. And you couldn't lose he had the briefcase and where you put his gun and stuff. Like, I was all in on Destro, man. I was all in. He was so awesome. My neighbors, Bobby and Brian, they had some Joes too. I believe at that point we were playing with them together. Snow Job was like I believe Snow Job and or Breaker were like my second ones. Because I remember getting the battle bear early on, and absolutely remember like that was because that was Snow Job's, like that was his car. So I remember that being a thing. And then Breaker, I just remember Breaker was my only green shirt for a very, very long time. I eventually did get Grunt, and I eventually got Rock and Roll. I really liked him a lot. He was cool. But then that was it. Oh, and I got Scarlet, and I didn't really get a lot of the green shirts though. Your Zaps, your Never Had Clutch, your Bazookas. Not Bazooka rather, but Flash, stuff like that. But I think I did get a Zap eventually when I was young. But they were so brittle, man. Those early ones were so brittle. Definitely, those are the ones in the worst shape in my personal collection, for sure. All right. Well, I think there's Destro's legs. It's a little thick in the booty. Yeah. So it was nice growing up around a water slide park like that. I'm gonna make these I'm gonna go a little bigger on all this stuff. It was nice growing up near a water slide like that. I'm sorry. And again, apologies for the camera work. Because it was just far enough to where you couldn't go all the time, and you really had to commit to it, And then, eventually you get old enough to where you could take your bike to it and things like that. But, for the longest time when you're a kid, you're at the mercy of your sisters or your mom or fill in the blank. And it was more about dropping the kids off at the pool, no pun intended, and not drowning or not getting creeped on. Oh, just leave it at that. But yeah, man, we did it. We did it. They always had birthday parties there. And I remember there was a lot of GI Joe gifting there. I mean, not just mine too. Like, like it was the place where everyone had their birthday. A lot of our friends had their birthdays there. So a lot of GI Joe gifts were given there. That was always the roughest part of growing up with this stuff. When you're into stuff like GI Joe toys, things like that. Was having to shop for someone else because for your birthday, or for their birthday rather, because you're shopping and you're just saying, well, I want that. Well, do you think he has that? I don't know, but I would want it. Hint, hint, mom. Like, would this make a good gift for him? I don't know, but boy, would it make a great gift for me. That was always the trade off that you always had. Like, I don't know if he'll like it, but listen, if he doesn't like it, if he really hates it, I can just take it back. And I mean, I'll take it. That was the rub. But what a time to be alive, though, when it came to toys. Just go up and down those aisles. Just choose something awesome. Even if they weren't like, that was the thing. My buddy that first got me G.I. Joe, he didn't know if I was at a G.I. Joe. It was just the hot toy. And it was like, the barrier of entry was low. They weren't super expensive. Figures, what were they, $249? And so you could take a flyer on that and just introduce someone to just this world of crazy. And Transformers were a little more expensive, but they still had the smaller, like the Bumblebees, those kind of cars. Like, they still had those you could get for pretty cheap. I think those were more comparable to the GI Joes. Maybe they were like $4.99 or something. And just and even the Star Wars stuff, for a long time. Star Wars kind of faded out right when I was in this media. That's why I ended up being more GI Joe than it was Star Wars, because I was just a little too young. But just affordable stuff. And this isn't, I don't mean this to be old man back in my day, but like, they do the page punchers now, which are great and a really nice way to try to get into that. But there's not a lot of variety in that. And even those are, what are they, 16, 18 bucks? Yes, you get two of them, but it's just, that's different, man. You got a lot of bang for your buck back in the day with that stuff. Like, as far as growth of characters and trying to get individual, trying to get a lot of variety rather, into people's hands. That was literally, I mean, unprecedented. I mean, it's watch any of those like toys that made of stuff. Like, you get it. Like, those guys that were doing it they were just breaking ground and doing stuff no one else had done before, as far as marketing toys, blah blah blah. I'm not even gonna do the form on Destro, because this form's pretty much done. So I mean, God bless them. Like, I'm gonna make his leg go a little thinner. That seems big. And now, yeah, like those, like let's say the McFarlane stuff, doing great. Using that just as a random example, doing great stuff, really is. Eye line. That's gonna be the top of his visor. But like those, those are adult collectors, man. Those are expensive. All these classified stuff, that's expensive. The even the 3 3/4 Super 7 stuff, that's $20 a pop. Like, that's, I don't know what the answer is, but man, that stuff's pricey. And I get it. We all got to eat. Don't get me wrong. I am not lamenting retail. It's not a complaint about inflation or blah 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 blah. It's just how toys have gone. The overall cost of making these toys is so whack, that it's almost impossible to compete. I don't know, and it's a different market now too. I get it. When we were kids, we didn't have the internet. We didn't have streaming channels that, obviously the kids can watch anything. At the time, we were beholden to whatever commercial, whatever cartoon wanted to sell us their commercial, right? That's kind of what we were dealing with. So I understand. I'm not blaming it all on toy prices, but man, like you figure out someone figure out how to do a $4 G.I. Joe style action figure. I mean, with all of it. I mean, with the detail, I don't know. I just feel like it'd beat a path to your door, I don't know. That's just me rambling. So, back to my humble origin story. His leg is going to be there. Snake Eyes has to have a leg that goes there. So his bicep. His leg actually cut through his bicep. His bicep's going to be there. So his leg is actually here. And it's a little more there. So this is not. We're gonna get rid of that one. We're gonna angle it up, kids. But that's what's great. You adjust. So yeah, I fell in love with superheroes when I was a real young kid. Superman. And I'm talking Christopher Reeve. Like, I saw that. I think the claim was that I was taken to the theater. I would have been 3 years old. Who knows? But I do remember watching that on I believe they aired on C. I just answered my. I was curious what would happen if I stopped paying attention, and what would happen to the camera, the recording software, because it runs out of 30 minutes, and it just answered it for me. So I wasn't paying attention. So if I got clipped there, I apologize. I was talking about Superman, man. So yeah, man. Christopher Reeve Superman. That was it. That was it for me. I loved it. And I'd go to the library, and I would take out that book by Jules Pfeiffer. His leg's a little weird. Yeah, his leg's a little weird here. I would take that book out by Jules Pfeiffer. The Great Superheroes, I think it was called. And we're gonna do this. We're gonna cheat a little bit. So he's not going to be. Well, we'll see. We'll figure that part out. The the Great Superheroes. It's got a white cover on it, and Superman, old school Superman, bounding across it. Really cool book, and I believe they also had the one of the early trades that DC ever put out back in the. I mean, they didn't call it a trade; it was just a hardcover book. Like Marvel put out the Fireside books, DC put out the Superman from the 30s to the 70s, I believe, 40s to the 70s. I believe it was 30s to the 70s. I have 2 copies because they also put one out in the 80s too, and it's essentially the same stuff with 2 or 3 extra stories from the 80s tacked on in the back. So as a collector, I've grabbed both copies and I love them. Black and white reprints. So I was reading these old school black and white Superman books. I wasn't reading new Superman comics. I had a couple Superman comics, but not really anything to speak of. And that was it. That was it for my comic stuff. I had a random issue with Captain America. It's where he had the super soldier serum taken away from him. And he was all weakened and he had to fight. He was on S.H.I.E.L.D. and all of S.H.I.E.L.D. got turned into Red Skulls. That was like Nick Fury, became a Red Skull. It was super scary. And I've since gotten all these, gotten better versions and all that stuff. But I've tried to keep all the originals of these comics that I just loved and read a ton as a kid, but I never sought out in comic books. And then along comes G.I. Joe #1, and we were on our way to I've told this story before on the show, but we were on our way to a vacation in Florida. We're going to Disney and I was pretty young. I think I was fourth grade, maybe fifth grade. So what is that? 9, I think. And I believe I had gotten, so I'd gotten these toys, but I hadn't gotten the comic book yet. And then like that was on the shelf, and I was just like, what? I read it, loved it, but it was like a magazine, like it was more of a magazine. So I guess maybe that would have been 82, 80. Anyway, my years are mixed up. I apologize. But you know what I mean? You guys have read the book. We've all read the book. It's very magaziney. It's not very comic booky. Obviously, it's a comic book story, but it's built like a magazine. It doesn't have the kind of ads I saw in those other few books that I had. It didn't have those ads. It didn't have to be continued. It didn't have any of that. It had these character profiles and pinups, and it was on thicker paper, and it didn't register to me that this was a regular ongoing adventure, like I read that Captain America book or whatever comics I did have, and you saw that it was a comic, it was ongoing, it was part of a larger universe certainly, and there were other books that DC or Marvel or whoever put out, and I could wrap my head around, even at that age I wrapped my head around it. I thought G.I. Joe was a magazine. And also I believe it isn't called Comics Magazine. I was a very literal kid, and I mean that. So it was a long time, specifically 35 issues, I believe. I believe my first real regular issues were in the mid 30s. So it was a long time until I actually got proper comic books. And that was, again, from a gift. That's why I love giving comics as gifts, because you get a chance to introduce people to cool stuff. My mother had gotten me, and this was covered on my mom's episode. If you've never heard that, first of all, stop. Go listen to my episode with my mom. She was awesome, Mary Lynn. Such a great episode. I loved that episode so much. But, so I'll just recap real quick. Basically, she got me the digest, the small digests. Oh, speaking of, oh shoot, it's over there. I can't reach it. I finally got a copy of the G.I. Joe digest with 21 in it. I got it for a nice price too on eBay. Professional tip: look for stuff under different names, because I got it for a really good price, and it certainly was called G.I. Joe Magazine, but they kind of mislabeled the name of it. So I can see how, if you were doing it for what it's really called, you wouldn't have seen this listing. It had been listed up for a while for a good price, free shipping and all that stuff. So that's a little bit of a pro tip. Look for mislabeled searches, I guess is what I'm saying. Sometimes you find some gems, toys, comics, whatever, but you find gems, because normal searches may not result in the results. Anyway, so that was my G.I. Joe haul for the week. That was exciting. And who knows what I got at San Diego? I'm assuming as of this, I haven't been there yet, but I'm assuming I got that sweet Cobra Commander. So, my mom had gotten me those the digests, and I was in love. I mean, I was just, I don't know, it was awesome. That was the stuff. And in there, obviously, you see it's the multiple issues and all that stuff. And I was like, oh man, what? There's more? So we went shopping, went to the store. I remember specifically asking the guy for more digests, and he was like, well, there's actual issues over here. And I was like, I don't need your actual issues. I just want your digests. I was so stupid. But it wasn't very long until I realized what I was doing. Like that, oh yeah, the digests were just reprints of this, cool, awesome, ongoing saga, of this military dudes. And man, we weren't a military family, so I don't have any of that. I don't have any of that, like, blood in me. But boy, did I love the A-Team. I'm not even joking. Man, did I love the A-Team. So I'm watching every week. I'm watching the A-Team, and they're using all these military stuff and doing all that. And so then you give me a comic book that's like kind of sort of like the A-Team. What? On a weekly basis. Obviously, I loved the cartoon at that point. And then the idea that it was a different, different continuity from the cartoon, that also was really appealing to me, because I was a big reader. I read a lot of stuff like books, and so I was always very thirsty for um, new things, like I could learn about something new. And okay, so his shoulder actually pops here a little bit more. We're gonna do that. So so give me a whole universe of GI Joe dudes. I'm in, man. I'm in. That's it. Yeah, wait, so if that shoulder's there, then that means that has to go there. There we go. That's actually better. And I was hooked, and so I started getting the actual issues, and I loved it, man. And it was this stuff. It was right around the Wiggum. It was leading up to, very shortly it would be the Cobra Island adventure, which to this day is all time. Like, I know they're putting out the obviously they're putting out the big compendium that's going to collect everything, and GI Joe as a whole hasn't always been great about story arcs. You know what I mean? Like, Hama would do like 3-issue arcs or 2-issue arcs that were solid, but he always had those. Always, and it was great for reading because you would be roped in. But he always had the little 2-page or 3-page B plot, C plot that would bring you to the next issue, but it wasn't like a big arching, Kree Skrull War kind of thing. Like, he rarely did that. Occasionally they would do stuff like that. Cobra Civil War later on. But that Cobra Island one, that whole adventure, I mean, it was awesome. Like, I was in. That was great. And I had a paper route at the time. All my paper route money, that was it, man. I would go to the comic shop once a month, eventually once a week, once I realized, what about subscriptions and stuff. But when I got early on, you just got paid once a month from the paper route. You collected the money. And I'd go to there was Hero Land Comics on 11th Street. And I'd be like, what kind of G.I. Joe books you got? And the guy'd have he'd have a stack of G.I. Joes and pull them out from the counter. Because G.I. Joe was really hot then too. Remember these were hot books. So it'd be like, oh, we got these. So I'd pick and choose and look, go by what covers look cool. And I remember when I bought my G.I. Joe 21 and G.I. Joe, I always get it wrong. I always think it's 20, but is it 19? Which 19 maybe, with Destro playing chess. I remember buying that one, and that was a big deal for me. Like, that was like $10 or something. And then, and I believe at that point, Tales of G.I. Joe had started to come out. So like, I got a couple of those to fill in like the early blanks. Like, because I remember issue 2, you all know, I'm sure you all know, issue 2 was super expensive because it was the first issue on regular paper, not on Baxter paper, which Baxter paper was the type of paper that they used for the first issue that I thought was a magazine, and they called it that because it literally was called Baxter paper. And at the time, it was a heavier weight paper. They were I've learned all this in arrears, obviously, but like a lot of books were experimenting with that. Legion did a Baxter series. J.J. just did that one issue, but there's literally called, like, people reference it as the Baxter series for Legion of Superheroes. The Titans at the same time did too. They were experimenting. What they were doing is they were playing with direct market versus newsstand market, and they thought they could. They thought that they would gussy up the direct market editions of the books to make them more like premier format, like you're getting more bang for your buck. And they upgraded the paper on those. So, and Legion at the time was huge. Legion was selling really big. Legion was selling as much as X-Men, or it was comparable to the X-Men. Legion and Teen Titans were. So those are the two books that they chose over at DC. Marvel, I don't think Marvel did much with the Baxter paper. Like they said, they did G.I. Joe, the first issue of G.I. Joe. But then that's kind of, I'm trying to think. I don't think they screwed around with their regular ongoing stuff too much. At the time, Marvel was really doing, they were playing around with the graphic novel game, and they were trying to get into that. In the 70s, Marvel spent a lot of time getting into the magazine game, like actual magazine, like, um, like with the Conan, Savage Sword of Conan books and Tomb of Dracula books and stuff like that, a lot of horror magazines. So they were coming off that, and they were trying to get into the indie game with Epic and Epic Illustrated. So I think the Epic Illustrated stuff is where they used things like Baxter paper. They didn't screw around with their bread and butter. X-Men, Spider-Man was huge at the time for them. Cap, Iron Man, those things, they weren't really that big at the time. Bob Layton had a great run on Iron Man in the early 80s, but by mid 80s, Iron Man had cooled off considerably. Captain America cooled off considerably. Fantastic Four had the Byrne run, which was huge, and Thor had the Simonson run, which was huge, and that gave those two books a lot of heat. Byrne's Cap run had come earlier, and it wasn't as long, and it wasn't as story. This was after Byrne's X-Men stuff, so it was really creator driven, and obviously Frank Miller's Daredevil, but that was earlier in the 80s. So by the time you got to this point in the 80s, where this stuff was coming out, Daredevil was good, but it was like the Ann Nocenti years, and it wasn't Frank Miller doing Daredevil. You know what I mean? Like year one was like Daredevil Born Again was oh no, actually he came back for Born Again. So yeah, Born Again would have been around this time, because he Born Again and like Batman year one, which was 85, or Batman year was 87, sorry. Daredevil Born Again was right around that time. So we're gonna revisit this. Ignore all that doohickey. Anyway, point being, I gotta draw this gun. Oh boy. Point being, Destro was one of my early favorites. Comics had quickly become the it for me. More than action figures, I gotta be honest. Like I like me. I did, I did like me some action figures, but there was a reason why I put the action figures away, but I kept reading the comic books. Like the comic book, the stories were what captured my imagination, to be frank. What do you mean, be frank? My name is Joe. Yeah, it was the stories, and it was weird. Like I have the brain that I'd rather kind of read someone else's stuff and bounce off that than just sit there and endlessly imagine things. I think we talked about that on this drawing stuff, where I do believe some people are great with established properties and doing great stuff with that, and then some people are just so wildly imaginative that they need to go off and do their own thing. I'm definitely one of the people that, like, I would be best suited in a playground. You give me someone else's property to have some creative fun with, and yeah, sure, try to come up with original stories and stuff, but I feel like I do a good job with it. But some creators are just so wildly amazing that you're just like, no, you need to tell your own. You need to tell your own stories. Like your the stories you're telling. Yeah. So here we're getting a little crossover here. This is cutting across there, but I'm just gonna follow. Here's what I'm gonna do: is I'm gonna follow my pencil, and so where my proportions are going to be a little off, and we're gonna like not exactly be a 1-to-1. We're gonna accept that because that's just the way it's gonna be. So like his gun's covering up his fingertips, where in the other drawing it's not. So, but that's how we're going to deal with this. So that would be his chest, except his chest. And that was the other thing too, like not ever really having a great understanding of for me, of like anatomy, because early on, at least, because like I'm always looking at the finished products, you know. So I'm looking at the inked versions that are then often covered by, in this case, pouches, you know, or uniforms, or fill in the blank. So it's there's so many good reasons to do this stuff, to draw like this, but then it becomes a crutch sometimes, or it leads you down a wrong learning path if you do it too much, you know. We are going to, my plan with this is to go over it with charcoal later and really, really get in there. Really get in there and get some nice lighting going. So what I'm doing is trying to trace out the places where I would think some of the pencil would live. So yeah, so then I read G.I. Joe exclusively for, well, like I said, I've said it many times, like till I got to college, and then I decided to stop, and then 3 months later, G.I. Joe was like, all right, we're stopping too. And I took that as an omen that I never should have stopped. But after getting into G.I. Joe and kind of I didn't have a full collection yet, but I remember I wasn't tired of it, but I definitely would in the letters pages. And this is why, I'll say this a million times, this is why letters pages and things like that are so important to be in comic books, because it's the letters page you read. So I think that's his arm pouch. It's the letters page you read, and people talk about other books, and they're like, man, that Walter Simonson Thor was awesome. And I'm like, I don't even know what that was. So then you seek that out. And the time that I was really getting into G.I. Joe, you know, the years started popping by, and it turned into the Fall of the Mutants, or Fall of the Mutants. And I was like, oh, that looks awesome. I don't know who any of these people are, but that's, you know. And then I remembered that there was a book. Oh, he has a thing coming off his gun. Oh, that's right, his gun's actually upside down. There was I had, what do you call it? Activity coloring book, the big yellow Marvel activity coloring book from back in the day. I still have it, actually. It's on my shelf. And in there is like Wolverine and Colossus and Cyclops. And I was like, those guys were, you know, weird to me. And then I remembered that, they were on an episode of Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. And so I was like, okay, so those are the X-Men. And you just hearing all this buzz about these X books and XXX. So I went to check those out at the store. And I remember, like, I am up for, you know, what would be like weeks. I'd go in there to get G.I. Joe stuff, and I would kind of flirt with the X books, and I'd look at them and be like, oh, that looks kind of cool, but I don't know what's going on there. And then eventually there was a stack of X Factors, and X Factors at the time were drawn by none other than Walter Simonson. And I was like, that dude, what's up with him? That dude's pretty great. I don't know what that art's all about, but I liked it. Like, it really spoke to me. If you're not familiar with the Walter Simonson's artwork, I urge you to check it out. It's dynamite. And he was drawing X Factor at the time, and it ended up being the introduction of Archangel, and, you know, Angel with the blue death wings and all that stuff, you know. But I didn't know that at the time. At the time, it was just they were fighting this big giant blue dude, you know, Apocalypse. That's ended up being, and the reason I went with them, and this is, I know this is going to make me sound contrary to most things I always say about not renumbering things, but the reason I started with X Factor really was I looked at the numbers and I was like, well, there's only 26, 27 issues at that time, and I can handle that. I was like, that's something I felt like I could catch up. Versus I looked at the X-Men, there was like 248. But the reason I don't feel bad about saying that is because what it was I felt like the X-Men was varsity. X-Men was varsity. X-Men was like, once I figure out who these mutants really are in X Factor, whatever is going on here, and kind of get my foot into the Marvel universe through that. And nothing was bigger than the X books at the time. Then I would feel comfortable enough jumping over to the core X-Men title. And it didn't make me think, why don't they reboot the X-Men title so I could feel better about my choices? It made me think, I need to catch up. I need to catch up to what all these other cool kids are doing and reading about and blah, 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 and about. So I need to get on board the X-Men, right? That's how I think it was my experience, but I do think that's kind of how this stuff works best, is give them something to aspire to, give the readers something to go seek out. And that's exactly what it did. So I read X Factor for a few months, and then you guys know Marvel, continuity wise, at that point, they would then go to Inferno was next. That was the big next crossover. So I caught up with X Factor, read a bunch of that. Didn't get all the issues yet, but he did get a lot. And I kind of got the vibe of who they were and what was going on and who was who and who had relationships to who. And, it's great. It's Louise Simonson. It's high drama. And, when you then get to that big next crossover, which was Inferno, then I was like, all right, well, now I'm going to use this opportunity to jump to X-Men. And so I believe it was 241 or 240 was my first X-Men. And I was blown away. And I was like, whoa, this is great. I still liked X Factor better just because at that point I really loved that dude's art. I didn't know anything about him. From those letter pages were the ones where people were talking about how great his Thor run was, and so I had to go check that out. But that getting into X-Men was like, whew, that's it. I love the X-Men. That was the stuff, man. So there's something to be said for not throwing away the bathwater and keeping the baby. You know what I mean? Or however that goes. You know what I'm saying. There's something to be said about that. I don't think pandering and chasing after the hot number one issue is good at all for the health of comics as an industry, but also for your fan base. I think it's and obviously notwithstanding publisher changes, that's not what I'm talking about. I think it just diminishes the fan base and gives people an excuse to log off instead of a reason to log on. And I think you always want to be striving for reasons for people to log on to your adventures. Especially, you gotta understand what comic books are. Comic books are soap operas. There's no way around it. We're just soap operas. These are all soap operas. That's all they are. They're high drama for kids, usually young males, but certainly, ladies are welcome. Don't mean it like that. And it's all soap opera. And I knew at the time, my mom watched a ton of soap operas. I was down with soap operas. I knew Luke and Laura. I knew what was that all about. I had no illusions that what I was reading wasn't just straight, oh my God, is he going to die this week? Drama. That's what it was. And, I think that's when they work best, because that's what keeps you coming back. And when you get away from that, and you were, what? I'm going to use we're about to go into a break here, a recording break, but I'm going to real quick use a comedy analogy from the world of improv. Second City, where my wife teaches and I studied, Second City teaches you to say yes and basically to keep the scene going, not to go for the joke. Other institutions, Groundlings, etc., they do kind of emphasize making a joke. Totally fine, not saying one's better than the other. But Second City specifically says keep the scene going. The scene will find its humor through, a lot of times, through drama, pathos, whatever it is. But by yes-anding on the scene and being real in the scene, not being not just looking for a way to make a punchline, you continue the scene, you carry it forward. A lot of times when you do something that's super punchliney, you stop the scene because it's not a real answer to what your character would be saying. It's just meant to make someone laugh in the audience. And while that laugh may be louder than maybe some other laughs, there's no follow-up. When you're doing live theater, right? There's no way to cut the scene. There's no way to end the scene. There's no way to turn the camera and all of a sudden someone new walks. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you're two characters on a stage trying to do a piece, an improv piece. And you really need to keep the scene going, until the scene's had its way. But that doesn't. A lot of times punchlines can kill that, and that's something a lot of people don't realize when you're watching comedy. That a lot of times some of the funniest punchlines just kill a scene dead. So that moment may be really funny and really great, but it just 100% stops the momentum of what you're watching. So we're going to be right back. So what does improv have to do with the comic books? Well, what is an ongoing saga but a continual handshake and yes and from one set of creators to another? A lot of times it's the same creators, but at a certain point, all books change creators, right? And then the next creator picks it up, and sometimes, to be honest, let's use the aforementioned John Byrne as an example. A creator will come on and not like what was being done previously. I've recently been reading the Avengers West Coast, rereading them. I have a full collection, but I haven't really read them in probably 20 years. Really, really good stuff. Really soap opera. I really forgot how soap opera that was. But when Byrne came on there, he said one of the things he didn't like was that Wanda had kids, because he was like, how's that work? And implying, and I believe his explanation was quite frankly grounded in some form of maybe it wasn't a great idea, but he basically said, if she really did make these children out of nothing, because remember, she had a little bit of like witchcraft, but she wasn't a witch. Now they really call her a Scarlet Witch, but at the time she was a mutant. That was her mutant power, changing hexes. I'm talking X-Men hex stuff here now, so a tangent from G.I. Joe. But like, if she, pardon me, if she really did make those kids, and they covered, they did this on that WandaVision show. Pardon me. Then her mutant power is like the most powerful thing ever, because she went back through time. Whenever she uses her hex power, basically, he pointed out that like what she's doing is she's going back through time, and she is putting a, whatever you want to call it, putting a fault into a bolt at a factory, and that's why the sign falls, when she hits her hex. So it is super powering her, to a crazy degree, like Phoenix level degree, right? Just the fact that her powers work the way they work. So he didn't like that she had kids. So what did he do? This is my understanding of it, by the way, all this could be wrong, but him being Byrne, he had a lot of sway at the time, rightfully so, so he basically just said, well, we're going to get rid of the kids, and we're going to say that they were all products of demons, whatever. So that story was that story. But in order to achieve that, reason I bring that up, in order to achieve that is he had to have a handshake with the previous creators Not necessarily in this case, the ones on West Coast Avengers. It was really the creators of the Vision and the Scarlet Witch miniseries, which off the top of my head, I don't recall who did that, but it was the one where they, like they moved to, what was it, Bayonne, New Jersey, I think. And, it's a lot of that was what they used in the WandaVision show, but that was it. Like the stuff they were doing in that, he wasn't a huge fan of, and was like, I really think that we can reset a very legacy character here. And so he retconned it and said that they were victims of, or products of the dude with the 5-star soul thing. And what's his name, Master of Puppets, anyway, the guy with the huge star hole in his chest. But what was cool about it, that guy, I was just reading the issues, and they were dealing with Dr. Demonicus. So Dr. Demonicus is the only name that's in my head right now, but it's not. Dr. Demonicus was a Godzilla villain that they used later in the run. Anyway, the Master Pandemonium, that's his name, Master Pandemonium. So Master Pandemonium, though, when Byrne used him, Byrne wasn't even pulling that out of full cloth. He was saying yes and to what they had done before with that. Master Pandemonium was an early, he was literally I think it was the earliest supervillain that those guys fought, that the West Coast Avengers fought, right? So Byrne 100% played in the sandbox. He also didn't like that. One of the things he didn't like was that at some point someone had said the Human Torch was actually the Vision's body was actually the body of the old World War II Human Torch, and there were a lot of reasons why it couldn't have been. And Byrne, that part of continuity apparently bothered Byrne so much that he did the Vision Quest thing, where he both fixed the problem with Wanda's kids and also fixed what he perceived to be an issue with this whole Vision thing, because the Human Torch had showed up a few times. It was like, how can the Human Torch be running around resurrected when his body was being used as the Vision? I believe was the original conceit of the question of like, what, like how is that possible? So he had to figure out, he did figure out a way to make that happen. And you whatever you think of those just creative decisions, I've always dug that they were done with an eye towards respect to the stories, respect might be a stretch of the word, because respect would be to leave them alone, but like they were done with consideration, that's the better word, of the stories that had come before. They didn't just say everything you knew was a dream. If they did, they had explained what the dream was and why the dream was what it was. They didn't just Dallas it. They actually said, well, no, here, the kids were really these demon babies. And then here's a whole nother adventure to figure out why and how and what we're going to do moving forward. And I appreciate that so much in comics, but that's the soap opera. That's the yes and, that's the handshake that you get from creator. Sorry, I'm off the screen the whole time. From creator to creator, from month to month. That's the handshake that you're getting. A punchline, going back to what we were originally talking about. A punchline with kind of a funny little gag that stops a scene, to go back to that analogy, is something like a giant world is going to end crossover series, right? So you're in the middle of telling this ongoing saga, and then the Celestials come to Earth, and then now the X-Men have to help fight the Celestials. Well, what does it do? It brings your conversation you're having with your reader, it brings that to a halt, and you then have to kind of pick up the pieces. And I'm not saying that every crossover is bad. I don't mean it like that. I know a lot of writers are like, no, I hate, I do think there's a lot of fun, but a lot of good crossovers that kind of randomly show up in books. But those crossovers, and even when it's not a crossover per se, but it's just everything changes kind of thing. You can't do that too often. You really can't go to that well too often, because you need to have that handshake from issue to issue, because you need that thing to bring people back and keep people hooked. Because what happens after the world ends, right? What happens after the world ends? Nothing. It's a reset point, and if you're looking to reset it, great, congratulations. But if your goal is to have an ongoing monthly come back and read this book, you really can't have too many of those. And I think if I can play Old Man Logan, I think there's just too many of the world is ending stories, and not from a they're not fun, they're not well made perspective, and not from a I need to read every issue perspective. Like the people complain about, like, in order to follow the story, I got about 18 issues. I'm seriously not complaining about that, because most of the stories are told pretty well, in that you don't have to follow along, or you don't have to read every issue. You can just follow the core series. I mean it from a dramatic perspective, that when that happens so often, and you're just rebooting, and you're getting new number ones out of it, and now we're this, and now I don't care. But if there's the little earthquakes and the little moments of, we think Snake Eyes is dead, and no, it turns out he just faked his death so he could go rescue his buddies, and so you're like, what? I got to come back for that. So you commit to coming back for that, but then in that next issue, Larry has interwoven another subplot that catch your interest, of like, oh, there's these other dudes on this other mission doing something else, like those kinds of things. That is so much healthier for the book, and healthier for everyone involved, because those are things that keep people coming back. They keep people coming back for more. It's kind of like, very early in the Skybound stuff, for sure, but like what they're doing with the Destro and the Duke and Scarlet and Cobra Commander, like those are, Duke, I think, was a little more self-contained. Cobra Commander felt very much like a setup for other stuff. And to be honest, I have Destro and Scarlet. I just picked it up the other day. Haven't read them yet, so I don't know, speak out of turn. But those are great, because they're little smaller stories that are leading up to, what'll get you hooked for the bigger one. But they're obviously, being miniseries, they achieve what they're setting out to do, which is tell these small stories and hopefully give you enough to come back for the next one. And the world's not ending in Cobra Commander, and Duke isn't dying in Duke. Like it's the start of something. It's the start of an ongoing saga. And frankly, that's what Larry has done with G.I. Joe, Real American Hero. That's what he's done with that forever. It's just one big ongoing story. And sure, some of it, not complain, but sometimes it's a little long of the tooth, or maybe it's a little. Sometimes you see some of the same notes being played over and over again. But Jesus, it's 40 years later. It's a lot. That's a lot. So I get it. But even then, let's look at the X-Men. Tell the same notes, because you got a whole new audience. You got a whole new audience reading these stories. Yes, us old heads are still going to be here, but don't restart it every time. Don't continually give me another X-Men number one, using them as the whipping boys here. Don't give me another Captain America number one. I talked earlier about Daredevil and Born Again. And Born Again, I don't remember the exact issue numbers off the top of my head. Born Again is one of the greatest. It was 6 issues. It came right in the middle of his run. They didn't reboot it. They didn't know. Years later they would do the Man Without Fear miniseries, but that was a little different, seeing as he was off the book, JR Jr. was off the book, etc. He just had a story to tell, and they didn't reboot everything. They just Ta-da! Told the story. What a crazy idea. What a novel idea. I'm gonna move this a little bit. They just told the story. And, we're all the better for it, quite frankly. X-Men, Death of the Phoenix, 137. Just right in the middle of it. Just right in the middle of it. Right in the middle of all this other action, you get Phoenix dying. They didn't wait for 140. They didn't wait for, whatever. They just told the story, and when it needed to wrap up, they wrapped it up. So my proportions are way off down here. I apologize. In fact, we can actually do something about that. You know what? We will do something about that, because guess what? We can do something about that, because we're not locked in stone. There you go. That's better. 100% better. 100% better. Yeah. So stop rebooting things, everybody, unless it's warranted. And I don't mean you have hey, the hot new creators coming on board. Nope. The book's the star. The book is why we came. The characters in the book is why we give a crap. Let the book be the star. Let the creators subsume themselves to the quality of the book. If it was good enough for the legends, for the Burns, the Simonsons, the Millers of the world, and I genuinely mean this. If it's good enough for them, man, it should be good enough for the modern day. And don't give me they need a big number one splash. Man, word of mouth, social media, you can get word out there. A good book will find a good book by a real big by a big publisher will find its audience. Absolutely. I have no doubts about that. A good book that's with wide ranging appeal. There are 100%, a million smaller books that don't have full bodied appeal that are really, really good that don't survive. I get that. But you look at other factors of, what audience are they targeting? What, is it reasonable to expect, everyone and their brother to clamor for it? Usually the answer is no. It's just a really good book. And then you go, okay, well, there have been a lot of good books over the years that haven't lived. But I'm talking about your mainstream stuff, your bread and butter that should have been, that should be buttressing. You like the use of that word? Buttressing your, your publishing line. Stop rebooting. Stop it. That's what I'm saying. I'm here to say, just stop rebooting it. Let them shine. Let them be the majesty. And it's probably too late. I gotta be sadly real about that. It's probably a little too late for a lot of that stuff, because now when you reboot it, what do you get? You get a lot of, legacy numbers with the current number, you know what I mean? And that's just a hot mess, So I get it. There's never a real easy answer. If there was, they wouldn't need me to yammer on about this. But I'm telling you what, guys, I'm real excited about this. I'm going to take a quick break, and I'm going to let my dogs out. Roof. Speaking of that, before I go into a break, I got to share this. Ladies and gentlemen, I can't tell you that I've ever heard the actual song by the Baha Men, Who Let the Dogs Out. I really don't know. Mary Jane just came by. She's got to go outside. I genuinely don't know probably back in the day in a Zima-fueled fever dream, I'm sure I heard the original lyrics, but I can't tell you the last time I ever did hear it. It came on the radio the other day on Sirius XM, and it was Who Let the Dogs Out. And hey, cliched as it is, that is a jam of a chorus. Holy cow, is the rest of that song terrible. That is the prime example of an absolute killer legendary hook. They've made millions, and I hope they're rich. I hope they're rich Baha Men, is what I'm saying. I hope they're richer than I'll ever imagine being. off that hook. That hook is huge. Who Let the Dogs Out? But boy, are those lyrics terrible. The rest of those lyrics are terrible. That's my hot take for this segment. I'll be right back. So, anyway, Baha Men aside, dogs are walked. We're back to it. Those are my thoughts on comics. Yeah, so it's an ongoing handshake. That's what it is. It's an ongoing handshake. So this is all gonna be blacked out here. So this is good. This one will make it nice and quick. They're an ongoing handshake. So I think your punchline is often it's just a scene killer, story killer, fill in the blank, so on and so forth. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm going to do this stuff, and then we're going to take a heavy charcoal for the frame of the door and stuff and just kind of rough that in. So, man, first of all, check the time. I appreciate y'all sticking with me. That means a lot. And if you didn't, well, that means a lot too, because that means you originally were here and you're awesome. And I get it. This is super, super stream of consciousness. New listeners, if you've never, if you draw with Joe, it's pretty stream of consciousness. So I am not apologizing for that. That's what the show is. The show is very, I try to be zen, try to be like happy little mountains, like that kind of guy. But like normally our show is really break down issues, episodes, things like that. But Draw with Joe is just its own special thing, and I like it. I'm really enjoying doing this. So I'm going to do the doorway stuff as that thick. This guy, the charcoal. We're going to do that all in the doorway. So I'm going to leave a lot of those details out, literally out. Like right now, I'm just not going to touch them. There's some that we can do though. If you look down here, actually, I'm going to change up just a little bit because I like how his legs cutting through the door. So originally my estimation on where everything would be was a little bit off. So right now I'm going pretty thick. And this, there's when you get down here to the leg, I'm all screwy. So I'm not even gonna play. I'm not even gonna pretend that I'm on target there. This is all screwy, in conjunction with the original. I'll tell you what though, that was something that I wouldn't have stood for. No, I'm too lazy. But like when I was a kid, man, I was a stickler. It really was almost like I was doing grid work when I was a kid. Like I really was a stickler for making things work, and as far as like being true to the original. And what's interesting, there's a secondary right. There's a secondary one right in here. There you go. So like I remember I would be drawing like pieces, like body parts, not understanding what I was drawing, but just following the ink, the line, the ink line that the inker had put in. Literally just following what the inker had put in, not realize I was drawing a bicep, but looking at it as a shape and going like, oh, that's whatever, that's a half oval. So I would really be a stickler on getting that half oval in there And it turned out, I was drawing a bicep, but I didn't realize at all that I had no realization that that's what I was drawing until, years later when, that's one of the big problems with this right here is my angles are all off. So that's it right there. Here we go. So I learned anatomy by not learning anatomy. If that makes any sense, which it kind of doesn't. But yeah, by not knowing what I was drawing, I realized, oh yeah, that was a pectoral, or that was a back muscle, or that was a this. But it took the shape of that, and was very much, that method, that way of learning is it's so dependent on the artist that you're aping, right? It's so dependent on the artist you're aping, because what have we learned? The best, every artist kind of draws their stuff differently, right? Different styles, different they have different errors, that the good ones choose to do, but the bad ones just straight up do. And so unless you know what you're doing, you can find yourself in a learning pickle, everybody. So I remember the first comic book cover that I ever mimicked, I believe, was John Byrne's Man of Steel. What would it be? I think it's at issue 6 when he's flying out, like away from, like towards this, like he's fully formed as Superman, and he's flying towards the screen. I think that was the one, but it was a Byrne Superman for sure, and I'm pretty sure that was it. And man, did I love Byrne Superman. I was in love with Byrne Superman. I still do. Like I reread those a collection they came out with recently, and boy, was that good. So now we're going to do them. We're going to really get in here with this charcoal and really make this pop, hopefully. So I remember drawing that Superman of him like flying up into the sky, and I remember that being kind of when I started understanding what muscles were there, and what what you were drawing, and what was being rendered. I remember reading I believe it came from the Man of Steel collection, which is what I had first before I had the issues, where Byrne talked about how he drew the Superman logo, which was, he didn't see it, and this is funny because this is kind of what I'm talking about. He didn't see it as an S, he saw it as two fish having a conversation. And that's how he, as a kid, that's how he learned to draw the Superman logo, by like drawing two upside down fish. It's fascinating. And once you see that, especially the way he drew his, you'll never look at that Superman logo the same way again. The traditional one, not, like there's a new stylized one and all that stuff. I'm talking about the traditional one, even the one before him, the 70s version stuff. It totally looks like two upside down fish. You're looking at the blank space inside of it, not necessarily the S for what it is. And I thought that was neat. That clicked in my head real early. And so then I started drawing his version of the Superman S, and to this day, that's kind of how I draw it. I draw it reverse, and I try not to do an S. I try to do two fish that make an S. So I did that, and I really loved it. I thought it was really cool. And then I was reading Excalibur at the time. So now I think we're into 1989. I would have been like 14. And the Alan Davis Nightcrawler pinup, that was, they would do the back covers. Excalibur, also a Baxter series. The first, I don't know, what is it, 12 issues or something? Or 8 issues, something like that. They were on heavier paper, and they didn't have the same amount of ads, and they would do, Wolverine was like that too. Yeah, because that is true. So they did do it on some of their mainstream ones. And Wolverine would have pinups on the back cover instead of ads. So Excalibur, Alan Davis had done a Nightcrawler that was on, he was doing like a trapeze act. It was kind of danger roomy. So I probably was set in the danger room. And it was great. And I loved Nightcrawler. I latched onto him very quickly as far as one of my favorites, favorite X-Men. So I was like, I need to draw that dude. And I did that. I drew that. And like spot on, like recreations. Like this, what we're doing here today, I would 100% say this is an interpretation. What I'm talking about when I did as a kid, because I would just spend hours working on it. Those were recreations. Those were like forgeries. That's what I was trying to emulate, and so much so that like I didn't care about the page. I remember this. I did not care about the page size. I cared about the picture and trying to, so like let's say I started in the wrong, too far to this way, too far that way. I would refuse to change the picture because I wasn't drawing with guidelines. Remember, that's wasn't something I'd learned yet. I was just drawing, eyeballing it and mimicking it. So I would, if it ran off the page, it ran off the page. I was not going to alter what I was seeing to fit this page that I, randomly, was using this page of just regular, printer paper. So half of these were like lopsided. That was pretty funny. I did Nightcrawler. Oh man, I also did Captain Britain, Alan Davis. I loved Alan Davis too. I still do. He's brilliant. But his Captain Britain, I remember I did. And I remember laboring over the detail on that suit, man. That suit, and this is not the red and yellow one. This is the one that was the Union Jack. That's to this day, I think, the best version of the Union Jack one. Red and yellow is fun and kind of cheeky. And then later on, they did a kind of a simplified Union Jack one that stuck with it. I think you'll never not convince me that they didn't stick with that because it was easier for artists to draw. But the Alan Davis Union Jack one, where it cut across his chest, his hood was so complicated because the way that the like the diamonds and the way that the Union Jack cut across the face, and it was just the top, and he had the chin guard. Like there was a complicated suit. Talk about complicated suits like Simonson's Manhunter suit, super complicated. His Alan Davis's Captain Britain suit, crazy complicated, and I loved it. So I learned how to draw that, and it was a trip, man, because like I had to get it right. So that was a big one I did. 100% did I believe it was John Buscema, Wolverine and Hulk standing next to each other in white tuxedos. Like that was amazing. And I had to draw that, and I did. And I remember spending out that one turned out, I think, really well. And I remember my mom to this day, she remembers that photo and she remembered that, that drawing just because it's such a great drawing, all credit to Buscema. But there I was in the living room just laboring over that for hours, trying to get it right. I never drew G.I. Joe covers, though. I don't know why. I mean, I certainly loved it. I certainly read a lot of G.I. Joe, but I never drew G.I. Joe covers. And I think maybe it was because stylistically, I always separated them out. Whereas the Marvel main universe stuff, I was, more this, more artistic-y, more, stylized, I guess would be the word, not artistic-y. That's terrible. Because like I said, I love all this G.I. Joe stuff, more grounded in reality. But it was, like a more breadth and depth of art styles, I guess. And it, of course, because you're reading a bunch of different books. So I did a lot of those. Those drawings no longer exist, sadly. Long story, short story, one we all know, but they were destroyed, which sucks. But que sera, sera. It is what it is. They're in my head, and they're in my head forever. That's what's cool about it. The most intricate one I ever did, and this is the shining example of me not properly figuring out scale and then not caring when I knew that I didn't was it was the cover to X Factor. Yeah, 30 something, 30 35 maybe. It's the Inferno one. That's the big crossover with the X-Men, and it's got all the X-Men and all the X Factor guys, and they're all ragged. They look like they've been through hell, literally, because they were turned into demons. So everyone's costume is torn off. Wolverine is a demon on it, and they're all like in a pile. It was the big penultimate issue, so like they're all gonna get their revenge on the Goblin Queen and all that. You're familiar if you're familiar with X-Men, you know that cover, and it's Simonson, and it is intricate as get out. And man, I drew the hell out of that thing. And boy, were my proportions off. So there are the final product. There were characters that just cut off halfway at the page, and I was like, I don't care. I don't want to squeeze them in because the rest of it, I thought looked too good, and I was too happy with it, and I really loved that one. And which brought me to the other thing that is so crazy. And I know if you've ever drawn, you're gonna resonate with this, is that, and we touched on this earlier, that feeling of I can't replicate this. Maybe it was last episode that I talked about the replication stuff. So like you start doing a drawing like that, one that's big and intricate, and you get a couple things that are really cool. Like maybe like I just drew that. Maybe I love the goggles. I'm not saying they're good, but maybe that's it. Maybe I draw those and I go, man, those goggles are the knees, man. That's the most. Those goggles look amazing. And artists out there, you tell me if I'm lying. Your brain goes, don't screw it up. You just did a killer goggle. You better not screw the rest of this up. And you can go into, look for my pencil sharpener right now. You could go into like there it is. Like vapor lock, where you get so worried because one part of it looks really, really good, and I'm being, with all humility and whatever. Like sometimes, and we all do it. All us, sometimes you hit something that just pops. You're like, man, that's it. And then you get scared because you don't want to screw it up. And in the digital world, man, forget it. Digital world, you start all of a sudden, you save it, and then you're doing layers, right? And then you're like, okay, well, I can always revert back to this because it looks so good. And what you end up with is some kind of weird looking, quote unquote, perfect drawing that is just super digital. Everything's drawn digital now, so I don't want to sound like old man again, but everything's, super, super something. But pre-digital, when you couldn't undo a layer, there was no undo, there was no save a segment and copy paste and take, if you want, like, I know they always did paste ups and stuff, so if you back in the day, if you wanted to take a good character from one drawing and move it into another, you could do it, certainly. But like this, for example, like it's a little too low on his thigh, right? So what could we do? We could digitally scan Snake Eyes, make him a little bigger, and then blow him up on this page, right? So he moves a little higher to match the original photo. You know what I mean? We're not doing that, but that's what you could do today with Photoshop. So when I would be drawing something like that giant Walter Simonson X Factor thing, whoo, boy, was I nervous. And it was a real like lesson. And I'm not saying I learned it right away, because that fear that I'm talking about, that still is in me, and it stuck with me for a long time. But you like I would draw the Wolverine character. on that cover, and he was all demonic looking. And to be fair, I was not super familiar with Wolverine and like what his costume looked like. And, you know, I mean, like now anyone can draw a Wolverine costume pretty quickly. They kind of know what it looks like. But the time was all new to me. So a lot of like the flares and stuff, I didn't really understand what was demonic and what was supposed to be part of his normal costume, things like that. But like, you know, I would draw that. I would just go like, well, that's so good. Or Colossus. Like, I can't screw up Colossus. But I had to do it on the same page. Because I was just drawing on that page. So you had to do it. There's a fear there. There's a real fear. And when you overcome that, it's so rewarding. It's so rewarding. You know? Which goes back to what I've been talking about on a lot of these episodes. And certainly talked about it. And I remember talking about it last week. Why do I remember talking about it last week, guys? Because I recorded it last night. So I remember talking about it last week. Because, you know, it's about the time you spend doing it and the muscle memory you build up doing it more than the finished product. I really believe that. You know, like I said in last week's show, you know, I'm not talking to the professionals out there. You know, once you get to a level where people pay you for your art, sure, hurry up. You got bills to pay. But, you know, for the rest of us, it's very much the experience, the stuff you learn, and the zenness of it. I'll tell you, because I'm blathering with you guys, the one thing I'm not doing that I absolutely normally would be doing is listening to music. I was a big music artist. Like, you know, have to have something playing while I focused. 100%. I used to listen to a lot of like movie soundtracks and stuff just to clear my head or whatever. But I would do that a lot. That'd be a big thing, and I'm not doing that now. So that might be why I'm rambling. Also, I got an audio podcast to fill. That's probably another reason. My dog's getting a little antsy, and it looks like we're going to come up on some time. So I'm actually going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. And we're back. Yeah, I was trying to think. As I was just taking care of my dog there for a second. I really don't. I was trying to think if I ever drew G.I. Joe stuff like directly like this, like directly from the page. I genuinely don't think I did. I don't have any recollection of doing that. I used to draw G.I. Joe all the time, but I would draw them more from, you know, like my memory, or, you know, try to draw a bad Snake Eyes. You know? It certainly was bad. I don't think I ever used to really draw great Snake Eyes. I've talked about this in the show. I used to draw them on the pamphlets at church. I forget who it was. One of you guys, I forget who it was. One of you guys reached out and said you also used to draw on the pamphlet at church. That was pretty funny. I got a kick out of that. So now we're getting a little smudge going on. I'm not doing a great job of monitoring the smudge. I'll try to be better with that. And so I guess I would doodle G.I. Joe as more doodles than I ever did as more concentrated. Oh, I remember one I did. Totally remember one I did. It was a Simonson Beast, and it was from the cover of the issue where he turned blue and furry again when they were dealing with I think her name was Infectia, and she had Hank had been human, and then he was getting dumber the more he used his strength, and this mutant Infectia would kiss people and turn them into her slaves. and like these mindless creatures. And so she ends up kissing Hank being Beast, and he gets super sick, and they think he's going to die because that's kind of what was happening to all the other dudes. And instead of dying, what it does is it reignited his blue and furry version. So it's him bursting out on the cover of that issue, bursting out of some shackles, I think. And he's blue and furry and he's happy again. And so this was Simonson's way of getting him back in his blue and furry, which is the best. I like Beast in general quite a bit. But his blue and furry is obviously that's the right recipe for Beast. Beast should always be some version of blue and furry. I don't mind the cat one so much, but like his normal traditional George Perez looking version. And originally he was gray. I get it. But the blue and furry one's great, just so good. Interesting side note because we have time. The recent, I was not a fan. I'm on record. Not a fan of the overall Krakoa storyline at all. Like, ugh, keep it. The whole thing, shades of bad. Started out with a great concept, really great concept, and quickly devolved into a bunch of people complaining about board meetings. And boy, am I not interested in that. Some of the books were written really well, and I enjoyed those books as a whole. I think X-Men was really good for most of the run. Super disjointed, though, because it always had to tie into these board meetings that were always happening. If I ever hear the name Quiet Council again, it'll be too soon. And so on and so forth. So, but that notwithstanding, one of the better series of that new run was 100% was X-Factor. Or, I'm sorry, X-Force. X-Force was really good. Really, really good. And they told some cool stories. I think the Wolverine book was really good, too. Like, individual books were good. But the main overall story was just garbage. And X-Force was really solid. And it was Beast, who was kind of the... Hey Angels, God, what was his name? Like he ran the X-Force team, and they were mutant. They were, what X-Force is. Like we go out and we strike first, and take out bad guys. Proactive. That's the right word. So that's kind of what the concept of X-Force has always been, going back to the Liefeld stuff. And I think Benjamin Percy, wrote it, and he did a great job. Like it's really enjoyable. But I'm gonna throw it out there, and I know drama. Like the characters we love, we got to put them through drama and put them through stuff, and that's how they grow. And so that's why Peter Parker's great, because he's always screwing up, and someone's paying the price, and he has to make amends. So I get it. I understand that concept of we break the characters that we love the most in order to watch them rise above it all. But man, dude, I dislike the character assassination they gave to Hank. Oh boy. Not a fan, man. And the resolution seemed such a corporate cop-out resolution of, we're just going to clone an early version of him and basically reboot Hank so we can still, modern day, still have Hank in the regular ongoing X-Men adventures. And it's not this Hank that went bad. Like, I think for a long time we all expected, anyone reading it was just like, oh well, they must have miscloned it, and they accidentally cloned Dark Beast. Because Dark Beast exists. I get it. In Age of Apocalypse Beast, technically they're supposed to be the same people, just circumstances changed them the wrong way. So if we assume that Age of Apocalypse Beast is valid, then technically that lives in our Hank McCoy. Okay, I get it. But boy, did I not like seeing what they did to Hank McCoy. It was, they made him like the real bad guy, like really the bad guy of the book, like a psychopath, like a real psycho. And I just never saw that in Hank, man. Hank had his issues, and he experimented, but he experimented on himself, right? Like he wasn't doing crazy experiments on people. He was experimenting on himself, and that's what got him in trouble. And yeah, I guess in the Bendis run, it was Hank who who screwed around with time and brought him forward, whatever. So I mean, I've seen them use that as the precedence, as an excuse for why they did what they did. But, ooh, I mean, he was straight up psychopath, and they try to redeem it at the end of the story, where he's like, "See, this is what I was fighting against, and it would have been for the good of man." But nope, sorry. Hashtag not my Hank McCoy, like for real. Yeah, like at least when you got to the uh, Age of Apocalypse, if you've ever read that. And I know it's the JoJo podcast. I'm going off a lot of tangents, but Jesus Christ, guys, we're here for 2 hours. If you're still listening at this point, God bless you. I love you. Age of Apocalypse, Hank. He had been through the Age of Apocalypse, like that. It was, the idea there being that it took a literal hellscape to ruin these characters that we love, right? A literal hellscape. Whereas in this Krakoa era, that wasn't a hellscape. That like it wasn't a hellscape. They didn't even live through a hellscape to get to Krakoa. That's the whole idea, is that yeah, they had rough times, but that timeline led to this formation of this crazy island, Krakoa, where they could literally live in paradise. So it's like, so what, the threat of harm to his mutant brethren that he loved so much, that's what drove him nuts? I don't think so. I don't know. I mean, that's the excuse you use, I guess. But, and I say that with all respect. I thought Benjamin Percy did a wonderful job in the book. I really do mean that. I thought it was a great book. Was awesome. But boy, woo! Kept waiting for that shoe to drop. Kept waiting for it to be, Age of Apocalypse. And nope, turned out that was really Hank. And he was not a good dude. Really crazy. So, anyway. So yeah, so there came a time when I was drawing a lot, when I absolutely did decide that I was going to stop emulating covers, stop doing this essentially, and and figure out how to do my own, like what was my own style, and like quote unquote style certainly was ripped from artists that I appreciated, specifically at the time would have been Simonson and Silvestri, who's, by the way, one of the nicest dudes. Both of them, frankly, are. I've met Simonson as well, but Silvestri's super, super nice dude. If you ever get a chance to meet him, Simonson, don't even get me started. He's just the mensch of menches. But they're them being the first two kind of modern art styles I was exposed to, and then of course when Jim Lee comes along, we all tried to draw like Jim Lee. Don't get me started there. Absolutely all did. But also, one of my very early influences was Keith Giffen. When I was turned on to Legion of Superheroes by my friend Stu, Disco Stu didn't advertise, but what he did do was turn me on to Legion of Superheroes. And it was during the Giffen 5 year later, rest in peace, Keith, 5 year later run, and was like, this is what you need to be paying attention to. I was like, all right, sure, yeah, whatever. And both, that's I've long thought about doing some kind of spin-off podcast about that. Maybe one day when I'm 60 and this thing is put to bed, maybe I will. But that 5 year later run is just tops for me. And Giffen's style there, if you've never looked it up, look it up. I know I do recall when Giffen passed away, I think I talked a lot about him on this show, so I don't want to repeat it all that much, but his style was just very different, and he evolved. When I look at, when I go through his catalog, you see that he was being influenced very much by the Filipino artists of the 70s. Specifically, I found there was one, and I can't remember his name, and I'm so sorry. There was one artist in particular that he really, I'll use the word crib, because he definitely cribbed his style from it. There's no doubt. But what Giffen did was made it his own, eventually. But early on, it was very much a crib of this foreign artist's style, not panels, and I think that's a huge distinction to make. But style, we all get influence from something, and he was young and he was figuring it out. But when you get to his 5 year later stuff, boom, that's a pops. And that style I was really influenced by. They're really hard, very angular. And what I was also being influenced by, which I didn't realize at the time, I was being influenced by the inking, not necessarily the penciling. And I've talked before that I think that was to my overall detriment, because I wasn't seeing the underlying character, I was seeing the finished product, right? But that's something that anyone who puts in the time and keeps doing the work, which I can't say that I did. I didn't keep doing the work. I put it down, then I'd pick it up years later. That's the kind of thing you overcome. And you look and you see your faults. You see I'm not great at this. Like I was talking about last day, I'm not great at drawing women, blah, blah, blah. And then you attack those and you realize, I do. I'm not drawing a proper fill in the blank muscle. What I'm drawing is the inked version of it. So let me get in there and draw the actual muscle itself. That kind of stuff. And that's just time. It's time, and it's energy and effort, and it's the 10,000 hours that anyone that you see that's doing this stuff for real and really doing it, they've put in so many hours. They've worked so hard. You got to give a lot of respect to comic book artists, because they are producing high level, even the ones that, like whatever styles you may or may not enjoy. These guys are producing high level, professional grade sequential storytelling on like a monthly schedule, like on a deadline. That's the word I was thinking of. Like on a deadline, like this isn't work on it till you feel it's right. Fine art piece that's gonna hang out. These are dudes that are looking for the most economical way to find the best shortcuts to tell these stories, so that they can get to the next page and tell the rest of the story, so that they could get to the next page and tell the rest of the story to get paid, to pay their bills. Like it's as close to, I mean, there are writing jobs that do the same thing today, but usually those are like website synopsis jobs, which I think are going away with the onset of AI. But like what Charles Dickens did, writing monthly to or early sci-fi writers, right? They would write to submit, because they had to sell these stories to make bread, to literally make bread, and to keep bread on the table. But what were they doing? Bradbury and all that stuff. They were creating these brilliant masterpieces that, as time progresses, society goes, holy cow. But they're doing that all on deadline. Comic book artists are doing this all on deadline. It's why when you get a series that is punctual, and some of the current artists that I'm thinking of are like, and really that put the level of detail into this stuff. Someone like Ivan Reis, um, who I don't know what book he's on now, but he did a lot of the Jeff Johns Green Lantern stuff in the mid aughts and DC early teens with DC. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what books he's on now, but like his stuff, or going back further, the George Perez level of detail, that stuff is shocking. That's what these dudes are producing, on a monthly basis. And I do know, I'm not what's the word, gullible or whatever. I know that a lot of them have studios. I know Mike Diodato famously has one. His stuff's great and very impressionistic and all that stuff. But like Diodato has a studio. I don't know about the other dudes, so I don't mean to 1, 2, 3, 4. He's got an extra finger. We're not gonna see. That's the thing. We're not gonna give him the extra finger. I caught it. We're gonna do this. So I know that there are some studios, right? So it's credited to one dude, but they in this this goes back to Bob Kane used to do. I mean, Bob Kane used to just straight up steal credit for everything, but it was all production line stuff for a very, very long time. Comics were, so there'd be a studio of people, Neil Adams, Krusty Bunkers, and all that. So that's nothing new. But then you get someone like like Kirby, who was not an assembly line. It was just Kirby sitting at a drawing table, and he'd crank out those whatever 5 pages a day or whatever he would do, or a page and whatever the crazy number he did. And you look at that and you're like, wow, like that. I was a dude redefining the genre, literally to keep his family fed and so on and so forth. And meanwhile, he is making some of the most influential artwork of the 20th century, and that is. Now, you notice I didn't say comic book artwork. I just said artwork. His stuff influenced everything from Darth Vader to almost any sci-fi blockbuster post 1980. Well, Vader was pre 1980, so I guess post 1970. They all saw what Kirby was doing and was like, and we're like, all of them. We're like, how can we incorporate that? Kirby was he was the artist on Argo, right? He was the artist that they used in Argo. So I'm going to fill this all in black later. I'm going to leave it for now because just too much charcoal. But that's what I mean by like a dude worked fast, and he worked intricate, and he worked good, and this Snake Eyes arm that's all a little goofy. And this is where I wish I had erased some of these lines earlier before I got into the heavy charcoal, but that's okay. Just think some of this stuff you actually wouldn't do a ton of erasing on, because when you did the Xerox, you would just set it at such a contrast that it would just zero sum the light pencil marks and really focus on the blacks. Okay. So huge respect to working artists that go fast and that can churn out just quality stuff. All right, that's all blacked out. This is all going to be blacked out. So I was definitely a Destro and Baroness were always an item when I played. That was always a must. and I was a Snake Eyes and Scarlet were an item, more so than Scarlet and Duke. So much so that like I would like sometimes I wouldn't use Duke all that often because I don't want any competition. Because yeah, I don't know about you guys, I, they would have adventures, but they were people, so they would have little their romances, and you use that as a springboard for some conflict, and they'd yell at someone, and then Cobra would attack. Um, dun, 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 dun. I am really enjoying doing this. So I'll tell you what though, I've actually been quite busy this month. And to be fair, I have not listened to a lot of other Cobra Convergence is. And so I apologize. I think that's actually something I'm going to do on this little trip to San Diego, leave in a couple days, is download a lot of those podcasts and YouTube videos and stuff and watch it. Because we're going with a couple of Joe Bros, or as our guy Paul, who's a big Cobra guy, has said, where he's calling us Cobros. But we're all going together, so it's going to be a lot of G.I. Joe talk. Excited I did get chosen for the Hasbro lottery, so I'm going to be able to hopefully pick up that Cobra Commander. Let's be real, I'm probably going to end up picking up the Snake Eyes Super 7 thing. I kind of don't want to. I literally have like 3 copies of that, and I don't need whatever this black and white sketch variant version of it is. I'm going to be real there, guys. Like, enough. We don't need it. Real talk. That's one of the reasons, 100% one of the reasons why I didn't do the cover to 21 for this. Because I was like, you know what? No. Like, I need to draw a personal line in the sand. If I'm going to complain about Super 7 always going to the issue 21 well, I need to put my money where my mouth was when it came to choosing covers to do. And that's why I chose not to do 21. That's one of the reasons why I chose not to do 21. It really is. Because, it's great. It's great. I love it. It's been played. So, you're playing yourself. Let's see here. Oh, my dog's coming out. She got good cough on her. We talked about Mary Jane a few episodes back. She's the sweetest. She's my favorite. 15. You're 15. You're a dog. And you cough. I do, as long as we're here, as long as we're here and we're talking, I do want to address the Cobra Convergence related elephant in the room, at least as far as this show is concerned. Long time listeners with good ears, you know that I teased a big episode for Cobra Convergence this year. And while I am so very, very, very happy to be doing this with you right now, and I genuinely mean that, I'm really enjoying this. This was not the original plan. I will not tell you what the original plan is because I am planning on doing the original plan. So anyone listening who I have shared that idea with, don't worry. It's not going anywhere. I just, it's a bigger thing. It's bigger than Cole Slither, guys. If that tells you something. It's a bigger thing. And things we're talking about. Real talk. We had a rough year in our house last year, and this year has been great and healthy and recovering, and my wife's doing great, and it's like you're recovering from exhaustion and from being on alert all year long with bad things happening. You really are, and this is what I meant a couple episodes back. I was talking about like mental health and just taking care of yourself. You know, it's so important. So like that was one of the projects that I kind of threw myself into last year while we were in the middle of dealing with some real talk health crises and infinite earths, real talk health stuff in my family with my wife. And um, towards the end of the year, my dog, Mary Jane, we were just talking about, she had we think she had an aneurysm or something. So we were super worried about her, and that took her actually quite a while to recover. It was touch and go for a bit. We feel like she, anyway, but I mean, that was on top of my wife's stuff and some personal stuff that I went through with my own whatever's out here. So it was a rough year, and I really did. I buried myself in that project. I would use that. I would go off to the coffee shop, to like Starbucks near us, and I would bury myself in it, and I would live in it, and I don't want to say what I was doing because I would tell you what it was, but I would work on it 100%. Put hours into it. I have put hours into it. I put easily well over 40 hours or 50 hours of work into it, easily. And really good stuff. I got really good stuff written. I'm very proud of it. I think it's really, really great. But then, eventually all that energy, that stamina, that whatever, that catches up to you, and then you just, at a point, you go, all right, I'm burned out. Like, and the emergencies are done, right? We're not having any emergencies this year, knock on wood. We're having a great, healthy year. So you find yourself going like, okay, well, I think I can relax a little bit. And you do. And that's good. That's a good thing. And then, like in this case, then I let myself off the hook of, well, I'm not going to work as hard, or work on that thing. Anyway, I'm going to finish this in a sec because we are about to hit our 30-minute mark. All right. And we're back. So, yeah, so finish up on that. There comes a time when, you just can't go, there's no more go. All the, pardon me, all the crises were done. Thankfully, Rebecca's health is back. There's a few lingering things she's dealing with, but she's healthy. She was finally able to start her schooling, which was supposed to start in August, but had to be delayed because she was going through treatment. So we dealt with that. And, job stuff is job stuff, and that's always going to be a thing. But you take change, and you take, it's just, change is change. And it's sometimes hard to come to grips with, and not always happy about situations. So when you get that reprieve, right? You get that moment of like, oh, pardon me, just inhaled wrong. You get that moment of like, oh, I can take a breath. I can finally breathe. I can finally relax. And then you go, well, man, all that, and then I was killing myself with all my free time doing this, but when I was doing that to take my mind off of all the other stuff, like it was like a get out of the house kind of a situation, because we had stuff we're working through. So then when you don't have that, then you take your foot off the pedal, right? And I think most of you guys know what I'm talking about. So you take your foot off that pedal, and you're just like, okay, well, I can relax now. I can actually enjoy life, and I don't have to hustle and, worry about money, and worry about this and worry about that. And this is, and so point being, the concept, the thing that I'm working on, which absolutely will happen. I promise you this. I've told too many people, and I think it's such a great idea. It just took a back seat to chilling out. I'm going to switch pencils for his head, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to go to 3, and we're going to go to HB. Yeah, we're going to go to HB because I think it'll give a good, different look to the metal here. you know, that while creatively and personally, it's something that I would have loved to have done for finished for the, for Cobra Convergence. Um, yeah, it just wasn't in the cards. And that's a bummer, so then that bummed me out, certainly. But, I then realized, well, man, I needed it. I needed a break. I needed to not spend all my off hours sitting in a coffee shop laboring through. I'm not going to tell you what, but laboring through it. Like I needed a break. And so yeah, so I'm okay. So I'm okay with it. And we're doing great. So I don't mean it like that, but I do mean to say that if you guys had listened and I built up a little bit, because it's an awesome idea. I love the idea. It'll happen, and when it does, you'll know it, and I'll certainly, obviously, promote it to the mountains. But I think you'll know that this is the one I was talking about. So this is cool. I bet you they use zip tone for his head. I don't have any zip tone though, so we're just gonna do it with shading. But so there is another big. I say cold slither. It doesn't mean it's related to that at all, but like that level, that scale of project. Like last summer's Cobra Convergence that I did, the Frost Nixon one. I really do love it. I think it's so much fun. That was born of trying to figure out a fun, smaller thing that I could do and get produced. Because again, another idea, totally unrelated to this one that I have right now, another idea that I'd worked on, I noodled on, I couldn't really crack. And so thus was born Frost Destro. And I love Frost. I think it's fun. I don't say that because I'm the voice on it. I really rather wish I wasn't the voice on it, to be fair. I'll totally let you in on that. But that was done more because I had a very specific one time when we were recording it. I was a little under the gun, but also I had a very specific vision for what I wanted out of it, and I didn't. Not everything was scripted, and I didn't want to. I was Scott, who's amazing. Scott Peacock, who's my Destro, is awesome. He was so good, and I wanted a little more freedom with the responses, and I didn't know how to do that. Writing it out, you know what I mean? Like the Destro responses were written out, but a lot of the other stuff kind of was organic, and so whatever. So I did my best David Frost impersonation. But those are some of the things. Like for example, I'm the narrator on Columbo. I didn't want to be the narrator on Columbo at all. I really didn't. I really, really didn't. I had in mind another friend of mine who happened to, when I caught him, be moving. And so he was like, he didn't have any time for it. And that's something, obviously, that's not a thing that that's something I totally someone else could have done. And, I could even go in and re-record it. Probably never do that. But like, I didn't want to be the voice on Columbo. I just wanted to be the creator on Columbo, the Jack Columbo episode. And, cause I think it's more fun for you when it's, the gag is that it's super immersive, like you hear me week to week, my voice. So I don't love that my voice is I love being a part of it, but I don't love that my voice is the narrator on Cold Slither. I think it would have been more immersive had I not been the narrator. But again, that was something done out of, it's a little peek behind the curtain here. That was something absolutely done out of necessity, because I knew that I was going to need to do a lot of retakes and a lot of pickups and changes to what I was saying in order to match any changes or tweaks to the overall build of the story, as I was putting the thing together in the edit room. And if I did it with someone else, I knew that would just be an endless morass of Are you free to record? Can we get together to record? So on and so forth. And I figured that would be kind of untenable. And I think I figured right, because when the final product was put together, it was very much put together in the edit, where I was listening and hearing things that needed to be replaced, or needed to be explained, or needed to be whatever, and so I'd make changes on the fly. And if I was doing that with, like, I guess someone in a writer's room, or recording booth kind of a thing, sure, but I'm just sitting at home working on it, and much easier for me to be the voice there. So there's that. Just some things that go through my thought processes. I don't know if that's of interest to you guys, but I think it's interesting. I'm always fascinated to find people's creative processes. I really am, because I think that I think that the more you learn about how people create things, the more tips you can get for yourself, and techniques, and overall, see how the sausage is made. I think that's cool. I think that's really important. I really do. Whether you're drawing, writing, it's so funny though, because like I've yet to, maybe it's because it's kind of not possible, but I have yet to see a really good like how to write thing. You see a lot of how to draw stuff, and as we've covered on the show, I don't think the how to draw G.I. Joe books are very good. I think kudos to the people that put them together, but I always think that there's so many missing steps. They go from draw this circle for their shoulder, and then the next thing, just draw the guy. Like that. That's not. I don't find that super helpful from a how to draw perspective, or how to draw like point of view. But there was a good Peter David one I read of how to write, and I think the Denny O'Neil one was really good that DC put out together, because what they do is they show you like the structure of how to put together a comic book script. When we're talking comic books, they walk you through like a script should look like this. And I remember one of the big lessons Peter David, and I don't remember exactly what the lesson is, so I apologize. But I remember he had he taught you it's like a word count for the number of word balloons, or number of words that you should even try to get in a page, because that corresponds to the number of word balloons. And so like little tips like that, I think that's the stuff about like how to write and stuff. But other than that, if you're not talking about like those technical things, which for writing scripts for movies, which I've written a few, nothing ever produced, but I got paid for a couple, paid for one, and I've written a few, that never really did anything, but they're fun. I really like it. I enjoy it quite a bit. I don't enjoy what I'm doing with this charcoal on this page, although it is kind of giving a smoky feel. I'm going to go with it. I'm going to say it's kind of giving it a smoky feel. So like writing scripts and writing comics are very technical, right? It's very because you're collaborating with other people. You need to know the shorthand of the language that you're working on, whether it's how to describe panels or film, whatever. But like I've sat in a million how to write comic panels, like not comic panels, but like comic, how to write comics panels at conventions and stuff. And I've been subscribed at times to the masterclass stuff, or Neil Gaiman will tell you about writing, whatever. And I for the most part, I don't like it. Like I'm try to say this without being super specific, because I don't really have a specific in mind, but like so much of it is like I draw inspiration from this, and I was like, okay, you draw inspiration from that, but I'm more interested in the technical side of it. Like, what are the hours you put in? How do you set up your desk? What programs do you use? Like that, like literally the technical aspects of it, because that's the stuff where what's the term? You set yourself up for success, right? And I don't know, maybe that's myopic of me, dude. Hey, listen, I've done worse than this. I'm going to throw this out there, ladies and gentlemen. I've done worse than this. This ain't terrible. Definitely suffers from a lack of definition on his face. To be honest, I'm tired. I've been doing this for 2 hours. I think there's some of that there. It's also, I'm a little further from the page because the camera's in the way. So I'm a little, not as like close to it for the detail, but I think it jives. I think it jives with the general vibe of what we've been doing. Now, let's do. So this recording is 14 minutes off. So my goal from you now is I'm going to try to finish the rest of this in the next 15 minutes, so we don't have to do another start and stop. So bear with me. So you know what I mean? Like that's kind of where my brain goes. Of like, literally tell me, how do you do it? I don't, keep the inspiration stuff. Like that's the kind of stuff where I'm like, yeah, we gotta get inspired from different stuff. I'm always more interested in the literal how. Like, and I've talked about this, I think, last time. That Beatles movie, the Beatles documentary. That was amazing because you literally saw them craft the stuff. You didn't see them sit around. It wasn't like, oh, I'm gonna write this song about this girl that I knew, and no, it's them in a room with instruments, banging on them, going, how's that sound? Oh, that sounds pretty good. Oh, I think that could work. What if we did this? Oh, okay. What are the words there? I have no idea. Let's just make something up. Oh, okay. Like that's the fascinating stuff. And I guess writing is so cerebral and so internalized and so personal that there isn't, you think there isn't much to it in the how do you do sense. Sorry for covering that up a lot. I'm just trying to hold this page. Like it seems like you just pound away on a keyboard and learn how to type. But I think there's just so much more to it. I really do. I think there's so much more to it. Same thing with when you're trying to be a regimented artist, drawer. Sorry for the noise. There's so much more to it. Like, carve out a day every day. No, man. Like, it's more than carve out a day. It's could be little stuff like don't break down your drawing table, or maybe break it down, but like whatever the habit is, make it easy for yourself to pick it back up. And maybe the ritual is that you break it down every day, so that it becomes a ritual for you to revisit, that gets you in the mood to draw. I don't know what that ritual is, but like maybe that's the ritual, or it is, don't break it down so that you don't have an excuse to not. I'm going to flip this now so I can get the same angle here without smudging it. So that you don't have an excuse to not draw, that it's just ready to go. I don't know what it is, but I feel like it's always going to be different for everybody. This would be a really good time. I don't have one though to use an actual charcoal. Like you wouldn't be surprised if he actually did that to instead of this pencil to use an actual like little piece of charcoal or crepa or something like that. Um, that would be really cool. I don't have one. If you were inking this, this would just be brushwork. This would just be all brushwork on the ink. And we're going to make sure we bring that that wall up further. And there's little knot holes because those are bullet holes. So we're going to do this. Now this is me I'm upside down. I'm actually staring at this upside down. So this is me guessing kind of approximation of what they did. I am not trying to emulate exactly what the bullet holes are, but I'm going to put them in there first so that when I go past it here, I know where to stop. Yeah, so it's fascinating. Like I've talked before, a friend of the show and actually a pretty good friend of mine, Richard Fairgray, fabulous artist. What a character. And like I love watching him at work because he's one of absolutely the most. I probably should be doing this with a ruler to give it more oomph. But he's a very regimented. Yeah, here we go. Oh yeah, this will pop. He's a very regimented artist. He's very disciplined, and he puts in a lot of time every day, and puts in a ton of work, an absolute ton of work. And he's very prolific, and I love hanging out and just watching him. I love hanging out with him, period. But I love hanging out and watching him work because it's just fascinating to me. And I know he shares a lot of it on, whatever, at least his whips and Instagram. He does a lot of some more adult themed stuff, so he may not be for everyone in the room. But yeah, I love the process. And you watch it and you go, oh, that's what I want to be doing. I want to be. Drawing like that, So I did a lot in high school art, and I genuinely I wanted to draw comic books, and God bless her, man. I remember my art teacher; she was great, Claudia Kramer. I have no idea if Claudia is still with us. She was youngish when I knew her, so there's no reason to believe she wouldn't be with us. But life goes on; you lose track of people. But she was always pushing me to focus less on comics and more on the fine. She was a fine arts teacher. We did have a Richards High School did have a what do you call it? Graphic arts program, graphic design program that was geared more towards people, actually getting a job. What? With your art when you were done. And I think maybe I took one class. She was a nice teacher too. I knew her. No, I don't think I ever did have her as a teacher at all. I only took the fine art with Miss Kramer. And I loved it. It was my favorite class for all 4 years. 100% favorite thing I ever did. And but man, was I a jerk about I only want to draw, eventually, not early on, but eventually, I want to draw comics. Well, you need to learn all this other stuff. Well, I just want to draw comics. And, to my detriment. Let's be real. 100% to my detriment. I was not terrible at some of the other stuff. I actually really was. I thought I was pretty good at watercolor. I really liked watercolor. I do not work well in color, but I like watercolor for some reason because I think it's a nice mix of this, drawing, sketching, and then finding your color as it goes. But Yeah, was I butt-headed? All I wanted to do was draw. And she was so right in saying that if I focused on the other stuff, the comic art is better when you're classically trained, So I did try to go to some schools and did college recruiting and stuff. I did look at some art schools and stuff like that. But I never took it seriously, to my shame. So you leave high school and it's like, I'm not going to draw anymore. So then you go to freshman year of college and you don't really draw anymore. And then sophomore year of college, your buddy John goes, hey, I got a job at the U of I newspaper. You want to draw? And I was like, oh, I guess we're going to draw. I'll be right back. So then I was drawing again. So now I'm at University of Illinois, and I got a job drawing political cartoons for the Daily Illini newspaper, which was one of the top 3, maybe, circulated college papers at the time. Which, I gotta tell you, that was pretty neat. It was pretty neat knowing that. And it was political cartoons. It wasn't comic book stuff. I was using this style, my comic book style, for sure. But it was political cartoons. So some of it would be local. Some of it would be national. Clinton was in office at the time, so there was a lot of Clinton stuff. I remember doing like a Two-Face Clinton thing. Whatever. Illinois politics kind of stuff. And so did that for about like half sophomore year. And then the next year came around and they were like, hey, I did it again through most of the next year. And they were like, hey, we have an opening for a weekend comic strip. Would you be interested in doing that? And so I was like, sure, what's that entail? So it was like one a week. And it was like a Sunday comic strip kind of a thing. So it was bigger format. And so I did that. And that was a strip called Freelance Badass. It was neat. And it got me drawing again. And then the next year they came in and they said, hey, do you want to do a weekly or a daily rather? Okay, hold on one second. All right, to borrow a phrase, pardon the interruption. I don't remember what we were talking about, but I am going to, we're pretty close to the end here. So what I'm doing now is I'm going to fill in, I'm just going to basically black out this floor. And yeah, were we doing inks, this would just be a nice brush. Thump. But it's his leg, his thigh, that all rolls into the floor. You guys can see that, right? Yeah. This is going to be real hard on this 2B. Rebecca just came home. It is now, what is it, 10:45. Swear to God. I don't even know how long this recording is. I honestly lost track. But I'm sure you listeners, I'm sure you know. Sure you're like, oh, Joe, it's 2.5 hours. We know. But hopefully this has been, one, entertaining. 2, inspiring. Inspiring is key here. I mean that. For you guys to pick up your own pencils. Remember, hashtag Joe on Joe. And also, and send me an email to joeonjoepod@gmail.com, and I will pick a random winner, and I will mail you this original reproduction of this great Rodawigum 31 cover. So that's a giveaway. But I really do. I hope this has been inspirational, and I hope it's been inspirational for you, listener, to pick up a pencil, if that's something you want to do, or pick up the typewriter. Typewriter. I'm old. Pick up the sit down at a keyboard and create and write or draw or paint. I think I've realized that at an older age, because I've never been great with color. I think I realized why painting is so attractive as you get older. And I've not done a ton of it, but when you paint, you're filling in a lot of the canvas very quickly with a lot of color. You draw, you've been here for 2.5 hours, and we've filled the page, but it's taken us there. Yeah, I really wish I had a like an old school charcoal piece. This is really the only, outside of ink, and I don't want to bust the inks out for this. I want to keep this pencil. So we're going to fill this in, because that cover is pretty. These are pretty dark. So we're going to fill this in to make Snake Eyes Industrial pop on the page, because we're really going to darken up this doorway. But yeah, I understand why painting could take on an attraction. Patience, how patient are you? And time and all that stuff. It's certainly skilled. I'm not saying it's not skilled, but versus laboring over a pencil stroke. You can smudge away and overlap. I'm actually friends with pretty good. I haven't seen him in a bit, but pretty good friends with Tyler Ramsey, who's a very successful expressionistic artist. I've tried to get him on. We've threatened. Oh wait, or did we do an episode with Tyler? I think we did an episode with Tyler. I think I did. Didn't I record it at his house? Maybe I did. I think I did. He's the best. But I haven't seen him in a hot minute. But his stuff is absolutely stunning. If you're not familiar with his work, he does stuff, paintings for like shoes. There's a shoe brand that does like a line of his shoes. I forget what they are. Bombas, not Bombas, something. But his stuff's great, and his stuff is it's very Pollocky kind of work, and he works so hard on it, and he puts in so much detail. So, I mean, I'm not saying that at all with any kind of like level of work put in, but he puts in so much detail. There's so much effort there, and there's so much precision of thought. To watch him when he's working in his studio is really awe-inspiring. It's really, really great. So I share that because there's all levels of art. There's all types of art. There's all levels of creativity. I urge each and every one of you to find your own and explore it. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to sign that. That's my artistic signature. Long story, Malone. Yeah, I think maybe I'll touch it up a little bit as far as erasing goes, but for the most part, oh, I know. Here we go. Here's a little bit. That's the other thing when you're doing work like this. There's a lot of places of detail that I forget to hit. If that pops, that's great. It's happy I found that. That really makes it work. Anything on Snake Eyes? It's crazy. And so that's a little out of joint. the most part, I think it's pretty square. So, ladies and gentlemen, recreated cover to G.I. Joe number 31 can be yours. Hashtag Joe on Joe, and or shoot me an email to joeandjoepod@gmail.com. And remember, all this stuff, share it with the hashtag Cobra Convergence. I think it's either Cobra Convergence or Cobra Convergence 8, or one of the two. Either one will get you. And I can't express how much I appreciate each and every one of you. And I appreciate you all listening. You're the best. I really appreciate you hanging out with me for this extended edition. Happy Cobra Convergence, everyone. Thanks again to Hoodie Cobra Commander 788. You're the absolute best. And more so to all you listeners out there, new and old, and tired and freshly napped. Man, I appreciate you. Thank you so much for listening. And now you, Joe. And Joey is half the battle.